We got so much anxiety about this man, Deshaun Watson. And what I want to do is I want to start steering the conversation towards, obviously, you didn't get who you wanted to get. You thought, you were going to have the opportunity, and a lot of people in the Cleveland area wanted to get guys. We wanted to get somebody else in there besides Deshaun Watson because we think that he's not going to be ready. You got P.J. Walker. We know that P.J. Walker wasn't getting it done. And so for me as a person and individual, I was upset that they didn't get what I thought they should have got. They should have had somebody in there ready to go in case that Deshaun Watson isn't coming back. And you see the thumbnail. He's practicing this week. He's week to week. He's day to day. Kevin Stefanski is giving you nothing. Dave's giving you nothing on that front in terms of letting you know if he's going to start against the Cardinals. Deshaun Watson has spoke, and he hasn't given you anything in terms of whether he's going to start against the Cardinals. They haven't given you anything, and that's what they should do. They should be as vague as possible because they got in trouble before by saying it's going to be this game, it's going to be this week, it's going to be this week, it's going to be that week. But I was analyzing and figuring out why is there so much anxiety about Deshaun Watson is because people extrapolate things. People like to put things in. People like to have information. Information makes you feel better about life. And when you think about Deshaun Watson, there's not a lot of information on a lot of fronts. There's not a lot of information on his injuries, but there's also not a lot of information in terms of making the thought process of how I'm going to buy into Deshaun Watson. And I started to think, playing quarterback in the NFL is the reason we watch NFL games. For most people, the NFL has done a really great job of boiling the game down to a very small, finite type of game so that more people can recognize and understand what the game is about and ultimately identify what it is again. They've done a better job of having fans be able to latch on to the most important players more than any other sport. Basketball is really easy to do because we know who Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, and Larry Bird is. It's only 5 guys, and one guy usually has the basketball, and it's readily available to see if he's good or not. Football is a little more different. Guys don't have, they have a bunch of clothing on. They got a uniform on. They got a helmet that obstructs their face. You can't see. They have visors on. That's the reason that the NFL makes it mandatory that their guys talk to the media. It's mandatory that quarterbacks have to speak. It's mandatory for certain things and certain protocols, right? And they've done a really good job of making everybody understand what the game is about, and they made it accessible to a lot of people. Fantasy football has helped that. Having an opportunity to have Deshaun Watson out there in forefront tells people, hey, that's why they call things the face of the franchise. When you're the face of the franchise, that usually just means guys are looking at you and guys are looking to say, okay, that's the most important guy on our team. That's the guy who makes the most money. All that's it being said. Now, most people like G. Bush, we know that. What are you saying? What are you getting at with this thing? Well, when you pick your quarterback, it's akin to picking who you're going to vote for in a presidential race. When you pick your group of people that you hang out with, or the different groups of people that you join, whether you're a Mason or whether you join the Friday book club or you play Dungeons and Dragons, all those things are different individual groups that people, like they're peer groups, they're groups that you build into. And the people that you choose and the people who you support at quarterback is almost likened to saying, that's why they call it the Sunday. Everybody feast on the ark. They actually think in this country, football is like a spiritual thing. So when you talk about people getting behind people and choosing their quarterback, people really go hard at that. That's why they buy the jerseys. That's why they ride or die. That's why those people are the most crazy on sport or on social media defending or tearing down quarterbacks, because they are the representation of what you believe football to be on that given place and in that given space. So when you look at Deshaun Watson, and he's been given the position, he's the captain, he's all those different things. When you don't draft a guy, it takes time to understand who is he, what is he about. If you didn't draft him, he just got here. How do you really judge that, right? How do you vote for a presidential candidate that you don't know anything about? You take a look at his track record. A lot of times he wasn't speaking because of some of the allegations that were coming against him. So you're not even getting to a chance to know who he is as an individual. And the only other way that he can indoctrinate or ingratiate himself into the Cleveland Browns community is if he plays on the football field. Because, yeah, you might not know him. You didn't draft him. That's fine. You can look up articles about him. You can go read all the interviews. He speaks once a week or whatever. You can formulate whatever opinion you want to after that. But the reality is situation, we formulate our biggest thought process about an individual. We formulate that when? On the field. And because Deshaun Watson has not been on the field for the better part of 2 years, how can you win any points? And I know I mentioned politics. This is political in nature. Politics usually lends itself to that. How can you win any races? How can you gather votes? How can you be your party's, how can you win the nomination of the people and you didn't get drafted here? They don't know you all that well. And on top of that, you're not playing. See, this is where it brings us to why the fans' anxiety is here. I've learned if you take all the vitriol out and you take a lot of different things out of the situation, if you just take that out and you just say, listen, put that aside. Most of what you do is just ritualistic things. It's a ritual. You just say, hey, I go to watch the Browns, I do this, it's a ritual, all great things. But if you look at Deshaun Watson from a strategic standpoint, let this sink in. So you didn't see him all that great in the first 11 games of last year, right? He's suspended. 6 games wasn't all that great. You come back this year. You didn't see him much because Kevin Stefanski never plays people in the preseason. So you don't see him then. So you go first game of the season, he's only really played one game that was really pretty good, and that's Tennessee. And let's be clear, he threw for 280-something, 2 touchdowns. It wasn't like he threw for 500 and 4 touchdowns. And then he's been hurt for the better part of six weeks, almost 2 months. So the thought is, for a lot of fans, and I said this on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, fans are very anxious for a number of reasons. The first reason is the things that come along with Deshaun Watson. The second big reason is this. Do you realize that you've learned nothing more than you learned last year with Deshaun Watson? So one of the things that you're going to do is, even if Deshaun Watson plays well down the stretch, which means, he's playing good football, he may, be rusty here or there, but say they get to a point where you make the playoffs or whatever and they lose in the first round, just for instance, people will say they don't know anything more about Deshaun Watson after 2 years as they did the second he walked into the place. And that's where the anxiety comes from. The anxiety comes from the fact that you don't know in your mind if he's really the guy you thought you imagined him being. And that's what it comes down to. That's where the rubber hits the road. Because you haven't seen enough. You haven't banked enough success with Deshaun Watson. You haven't seen the fourth quarter comeback. You haven't seen the game where he busts out for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. You haven't seen the game where he gets up from being injured and puts himself back in the huddle and leads his team to a drive down the field. You haven't seen him get the sound bites from the radio and he's on the sideline and telling and cheering his guys, come on, we can do it. You haven't had the press conference when he talks and said, Deshaun, you was really in the zone today. What was you doing, Deshaun? Like, you was hitting everybody. Everything looked great. And he says, man, it was just one of those days as a quarterback. You haven't had none of that. And if you don't have any of that, what type of feelings, what type of attachment have you grown? See, adversity and success and time builds a bond. To be honest, a lot of the Cleveland Browns fan base hasn't bonded with Deshaun Watson. And you could get mad or be upset. I didn't think Baker Mayfield was the guy. But the one thing Baker Mayfield had was 4 years of adversity, of wins, of losses, of good throws, bad throws, comebacks, spats with the media, spats with Stefanski. He had all of that. He had the whole gambit wrapped up in one. And just like you have all those things happen in regular relationships when you break up with someone or you make up with someone, those things still, for better or worse, is history. And it's hard to break up with somebody and go to a new person when you never see them. How do you get over an old person and you want to date somebody new if you never go on dates? Every time you call her, she like, I got something to do. I'm sick. I don't want to do that. Like, how can you build that type chemistry? And so that's why a lot of people think that you're here in a situation that you are with Deshaun Watson is because it's out of a situation where you're thinking, oh, well, look, people don't like him. No, it's just the fact that you haven't had any success with him and you haven't had that chemistry. And the only thing that can really work with that is time. And it's how ironic is that? The only thing that can really mess with that is time. But at the same time, that's the only thing that's going to help is injury. Time too. And so when I talk to you guys and I say, what's the best way to figure out where you go now with Deshaun Watson, is you forget about him. Say, I'm confused. So let me step back. Hold on. You just said you need to spend time. You need to cultivate. You need to do all this thing. What are you talking about? I'm totally confused. Well, look. Have you ever been in a relationship and you get out of one and you're looking to date and you date somebody and they just got out of a bad relationship? It's kind of staticky. They just got out of one and they still got some baggage that's coming with that bad relationship? Well, it's kind of like with Deshaun Watson. Right now, you're clinging for any hope, anything that you can get right now. And the fact of the matter is, he's not available. He's not physically available to be in a relationship. And the worst thing you could do is force somebody and try to force things before it's time to be ready to be in another one. That's the best analogy I can give. Deshaun Watson is an individual who's not ready to play football. The best way to get over him is to tell your team, look, Deshaun may be here or he may not be here. Rip the Band-Aid off. He could come in, he could play 2 games, be very good, be awesome, but guess what? He can be hurt and be gone the next game. So you can't emotionally invest in him as if he's going to come back and save the day. We need to hang our hat on what we do best. We need to figure out what we need to do here in this team atmosphere and get and cover all our bases. So that if Deshaun comes back and he throws the football well, great. Clap it up for him. But we're not counting on it. If Deshaun comes in and he has no more hiccups, no injuries, no setbacks, great. We'd love to have you back. Let's keep it moving. But under those circumstances, are we putting all our eggs in one basket? We need to have DTR ready to go. We need to have PJ Walker ready to go. And the reason why a lot of people were so upset was you could have had another backup quarterback ready to go. But that's, hey, it's water under the bridge. Hey, what are we going to do about it? It's water under the bridge. I can't keep sitting up here complaining about why didn't they go. No, it's time to move the page forward. Let's talk about what they can do with the cats that they got and the moves that they can make in order to get this team to go where they are. Because I'm going to tell you what, I told Leroy Hoare today. He completely agreed with me. This team is so ironic that this team is right now, the 2 losses that they had, you telling me if the Cleveland Browns ain't 1 or 2 bounces or a couple runs here away from being 6-1. They're right there. And they got people out for the season. So it's not like this whole thing is done. It's not as if the whole season is lost. But what they got to do moving forward is they got to change their mind state. They got to change their mind state until we treading water and we floating and we lucky to be 4-3. No, you should be thinking about, hey, that ain't luck no more. We need to operate in a way that we need to get these wins now because I still think this team can be where they want to go.